Hey ballers, welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Ballers Show. I'm V Lee.
And I'm Adam Schneider.
Adam, did you know
V.
that there's a thing called pet screening?
Before we talked with our guest, I didn't know that we wanted to have all of our tenants' pets have a 5-paw rating. That's super cool.
Yes, I mean they get rating. We get rated and now our pets get rated.
Everybody's getting rated, the cats, the birds, the dogs. And what's so beautiful about this is it's a third party that deals with the issue of the pets. So you as the landlord don't have to worry about that anymore. How cool is that?
That's super cool. And we learned that from our guest that we're bringing on the show today, Joni Wolfswinkel. I can't wait for you guys to hear our conversation. What do you think about that?
They're going to love it.
All right, let's get to it then.
Let's do it.
Hey, Joni. So excited to have you here today.
I'm super excited to be here, V. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
And hey, Adam, you made it.
I'm here.
Hey, okay, so I know we got a lot of good stuff coming up, but first, can we get a quick introductions from you so the audience know who you are, Joni?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Joni Wolfswinkel. I live in Houston, Texas, and been investing in real estate now for over 20 years. I kind of lost count of it. So I started at the age of 19. So background, so my husband and I, we're actually high school sweethearts. So we kind of grew up together and went to college together. And in college, we're like, hey, and we saw this late night infomercial. We're like, oh, this sounds really cool. And we really want to get into real estate, flipping houses. And so I don't know if you heard it back then. It was Russ Whitney back then, right? Which is, they did a lot of wholesaling and whatnot. And they had all these boot camps. So Sean actually had he went on a full ride scholarship and had some investment fund, or actually he had a college fund set aside that his parents set aside. And so because he ran on a full ride scholarship, we decided to use those funds to buy real estate boot camps. So that's kind of what got us in the real estate game. So we actually were buying and flipping properties through college. I hated school. I wasn't the studious type. So probably my junior year, I decided, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and get my broker's license. So I went and got my broker's license and never looked back. I've been a broker ever since, and it's been a fun journey. I moved to Texas here in 2006. I'm originally from New Mexico. And at the time in New Mexico, we were doing a lot of foreclosure investing, where you know that in New Mexico, it's actually a non-judicial state. I'm sorry, a judicial state. And so the foreclosure process takes a little longer, where in Texas, it's non-judicial. So much faster process. And so we said, you know what, let's just sell our house in New Mexico and move to Texas. We literally had nothing. We sold our house and got up and moved. No family, nobody here in Texas. And that was a big, big move for us.
That turned out to be a really good move for y'all, huh?
Yeah, it's probably the best thing that we could have done, but super scary not having, anybody else to lean on but each other. But I think that's kind of what worked for us, is we had each other to lean on.
Well, I gotta give it to you. At 19, most of us were busy partying and drinking and getting in trouble, and you guys use your money to invest in real estate.
That's exactly it. Most of our friends were out partying, and it's funny because we used to play a lot of the Robert Kiyosaki, the board games, the cash flow games.
Yeah.
And so our friends were like 45 years old at the time when we were like 19, 20. And so our weekends were playing cash flow games, at our friend's house. So totally different than what we were, our friends were doing.
But it pays off, right? Because right now you can practically really retire and just do anything from anywhere.
Absolutely. Now we have the freedom to go where we want to go. We typically take about a month off during the summer just to be with our kids. Typically we go to Mexico for a month. Yeah, absolutely. So delayed gratification, right?
Joni, if you could spin the clock back and play it over and do anything differently in the very beginning, in the first few years, is there something you would have done differently, or do you think you pretty much would have taken that same path?
I probably would have taken that same path. Now I know there's been a lot of challenges. And of course, there are some things that I would have done differently. I mean, I didn't have a real job per se, going to working for somebody else. And so just learning how to, manage people, that was a whole learning curve for me, hiring people and buying properties that didn't make sense, all of that, right? There's tons of things that I would have done differently there. But as far as like the path of real estate and how I got it started early, no, I would have done it all over again.
Got it.
Tell us how many companies you own now.
It's funny because we own probably about 5 different companies, and I'm an entrepreneur at heart, a serial entrepreneur. So that's one thing that's really hard is when all these opportunities come on, you want to do them all, but you can't. You have to really try to stay focused. So I have 5 companies now, but they all kind of work together. So I have my Texas Turnkey Properties is actually my investment company, my husband and I's investment company, where we build new construction, single family homes and duplexes, and we sell them to investors across the country. And then we manage for the investors. So that's one of our companies. And then I own 2 property management companies, one in Houston, Texas, and the other in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where we manage just about 1,500 doors in both markets. So those are the 3 main companies that I own. And then I own a VA company. So if you guys are familiar with virtual assistants, mm-hmm. We actually used a lot of virtual assistants in our property management company to really help grow and scale that business. As you know, it's not a high, profit margin business. So in order for us to keep our costs down, we've used virtual assistants. And so because we're part of a franchise, we were able to assist other franchise owners and other businesses really to do the same thing. So we have a VA company. And of course, I own, about 50 or so rental properties of my own that we manage.
So 5 companies and children and a husband, and you wrote 2 books.
1 book. No, I haven't wrote the second one yet, but I wrote my first book last year, and really that was about my journey. And I really, really have a passion for empowering women, to, like yourself, Vee, more women need to get involved in real estate, right? Or it doesn't have to be in real estate. It's whatever your heart desires, whatever you have a passion and dream for. And so that's one of the main reasons why I wrote this book, is for women to empower them that, hey, like you can do whatever you want to do, right? And so, that was the last year. It's called The Choice is Yours, Balancing Success as a Wife, Mom, and Entrepreneur. So if you guys want it, it's out there on Amazon.
Well, I tell you, you're very impressive. And there's a questions I really want to ask, because someday I feel like I get the hang of it. And someday I feel like I'm just missing the mark everywhere, between dog, kid, business, and other social life and all. How do you manage expectations? Because you're a business owner and you're an overachiever. And I'm sure you always feel like you got to do more and do better. How do you manage your own expectations so that you don't tell yourself, I'm not doing good enough?
So self-development is extremely important for me. And also, I actually bring that into my company culture as well. So I have about over 50 employees that work for me. And so, they're constantly improving themselves as well. And so self-improvement is a big part of my life. Read a lot of books. I, listen to a lot of podcasts like this. I mean, there's so much out there, so much knowledge out there, and free knowledge, right, that you can take advantage of. And so those are the little things. In working out, of course, like being healthy and fit, I think that gives you not only confidence, but also gives you motivation and energy to keep going. All these little things that I do, my routine, I know some people think that routines are extremely boring, but I am big on routine. So I get up at 5 in the morning, and that's when I work out and I journal, I read, I do all these things. I have done half of my day probably by like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, you take me with you next time. I need to follow that routine.
Yeah. And so, it's if I don't do it, then I feel off. And so I just made it a part of just making it a habit to do these things every single day to be fulfilled. And then, to be a mom, whatever I do, whether it's work, family, I'm putting in 110%. engagement in whatever I'm doing. And if there's one area that I'm maybe missing the boat on, then I'm okay, let's focus on that one part for a little bit. So I try to engage 110% in whatever I'm doing.
Have you read the book, The Miracle Morning?
Yes, I have.
It sounds like you're following some of that.
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly what I've done.
Right. I started doing it and it was excellent, except for the fact that my wife didn't like the alarm so early. So that sort of kiboshed it. So I'm about a 50-50 with what he does.
Yeah. Well, my husband thinks I'm crazy too. So I go to training twice a week and I get up at 4 a.m. to go. And he's like, you are nuts. He's like, I'm not getting up that early. But once you make it a habit, I don't know if you guys have read The Atomic Habits, but it is a great book. And it's all about the habits that you create. Because I mean, once you've created those habits, it's just like second nature. It just comes to you.
Well, I still don't know how you do it, girl.
So, Joni, you're operating in 2 markets.
Right.
In Albuquerque and Houston. And I've been to both places many times. They're different markets.
Absolutely.
When you have people you're working with and they're asking you for your opinion on comps on rentals, that to me seems really hard. I think comping a property for sale is easy because there's so much MLS information out there. But when it comes to comping what a property would rent for, there's really not that much information. So do you draw mainly from personal experience, or how do you pull from, or how do you recommend that investors put that piece of the puzzle into their decision-making when they're looking at buying property?
This episode is brought to you by Buzz Vacation Rentals, a premier property management company in Houston and Galveston areas. Buzz Vacation Rentals specializes in managing short-term rentals the right way. Give Buzz a call today at 281-549-8432 to learn more, or check out the website at www.buzzvacationrentals.com. Now back to the Real Estate Ballers show.
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple of things, like here in Houston, actually, the MLS is great for rental comps. Like it's as strong as the sales, right? And so that's what I use here. And then in Albuquerque, initially, that wasn't the case. Like realtors weren't used to putting their properties on the market for rents. But we've been out there, 7 years or so in the property management space. And we actually started putting it on MLS since the very beginning. So at the beginning, there was more research. We used different platforms like Rentometer. Also, we would compare it to what Zillow had. And then we would walk the property and we would look at, other areas and drive by properties to see what the comps look like. So initially, it was some research and some homework that we had to do. But now we established, actually, our company has put the properties on the market for rent on MLS in Albuquerque. So now that's what agents use now. So it's pretty strong in Albuquerque as well now.
That's really interesting. I'm in North Carolina, and I would say under 5% of the rentals are put on.
And that's how it was in Albuquerque as well. And now we're strong enough to where any property that we're looking up, we can get strong comps there.
Okay, I'm jealous.
Somebody's got to do it. Just establish it, right?
Yeah, I'm jealous that you have. That makes it a lot easier.
It does.
Do you have a position on what you think the market's going to look like in the next, I don't know, whatever period you want to take, 12, 24 months from a rental?
If I had that crystal ball, something's got to give, right? With inflation, it's, I say at least in the next 3 to even maybe 4 to 5 months, I think, obviously interest rates are going to rise. And I think that's when it's going to slow down. But Texas has always been a strong market. Even, I remember in 2010, we thought the world was going to fall apart and still Texas held, right? And so I don't know. If I had that crystal ball, it's hard to really tell.
Okay. I've got one more question that I really have had on my chest, and you're the right person to answer this question.
Awesome.
So I own a property. You're property managing it for me. We've had it for a couple of years. A lease is coming up for renewal, and we have to make the decision about what to do with the rent rate. Tell me, how do you give recommendations to people you work with about whether they should be raising rents or not in this market in your situations?
Yeah. And so, I mean, if the tenant is moving out, then absolutely, I think that, with appreciation, if the rents have also, and we are seeing appreciation for rents as well. And so we are recommending to our investors, hey, let's take advantage of that. Let's go ahead and, ask for a higher price in rent, right? But when it comes to renewals, say your tenant is, due for a renewal, and I wouldn't necessarily increase the rent to market rents. The reason why is because you have a risk of that tenant moving out, right? And so if that tenant moves out, you're going to have make ready costs, possibly holding costs, and that alone can hurt your return on investment. So, you really have to be smart with it. I mean, is it worth, increasing $200, or should we do it maybe 50 over a year's period, right? And till we get to that point. So, and that's typically what we recommend to our investors.
I'm so glad you said that, because what I'm hearing out there is that most management company make money at lease signing. They less interested in the tenant renewing the lease than, renewing the lease, and they rather have a new tenant in, because that's where they make most of their money.
There's a lot of property management companies like that. And what's kind of different with us is that we're investors ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how I run my business. I look at my investor and I say, hey, like, what are your ultimate goals? And that's what I ask them at the start of managing their properties. What's your goal for this property, right? Mm-hmm. And so we want to meet their expectations, not ours. It's their expectations. For anybody that's listening out there, if you're looking for a property management company or somebody to vet, ask those questions. Like, do you yourself own rental properties, right? Because if they don't, then that might be a red flag.
Yeah, that's true. So I want to circle back to something you said earlier, that you guys use Zillow to kind of look at the rent comp as well. So we know how over-exaggerating Zillow can be on property value.
Right.
How reliable is Zillow on rent rate?
It's very similar. Zillow's, of course, it's hard to rely on them. But when we don't use them just for the sole comp, we kind of use it to compare. So we're looking on Rentometer and MLS, like what is that saying compared to what Zillow's saying, to get a clearer picture, if that makes sense. So we don't just rely on it, we use it as a source to compare against the others.
So Joni, you've got properties that are in Albuquerque and Houston. Do you have a weighted focus? Did you choose Albuquerque because you wanted to spend time there for other reasons? How did you choose the two markets that you're in?
That's a really good question, Adam. And I'm glad you brought that up, because like I mentioned before, born and raised in New Mexico. That's where I started my real estate career, was New Mexico. So I know that market really well. Well, when we moved to Texas, we kind of put New Mexico on the back burner, right? And just fully went straight into Texas. Well, I own Real Property Management is actually a franchise. That's a property management franchise. And so an opportunity came to where that franchise for Albuquerque was available. And they came to Sean and I and said, hey, I know you're successful here in Texas. We don't really have much of a presence in Albuquerque. Would you like to own a franchise there? And so we bought, thinking, oh, yeah, absolutely, because I'm going to go back there and visit my family, right? Because my mom and dad still live there. I still had ties to New Mexico. And so at the time, I thought it was really good, and let's just open up shop. So we did. And I mean, there was challenges with that. I mean, obviously, managing two different locations was not something I was used to. And so managing people was new to me to begin with. So managing afar took some time to really get up to speed and actually get good people in Albuquerque. But so that's kind of how that came about.
Got it. Now, do you have any short-term rentals in Albuquerque?
We did. We just sold. It was one of our personal short-term rentals in Albuquerque. And so we wanted to test it out because we really hadn't dabbled in the short-term market at all. And so we did that. And it was a little more time consuming than the regular, longer term lease rentals.
Certainly is. Yes.
Yeah. So we did it for a little bit, and it was mainly so I can, when I would go visit Albuquerque, because I would go there once a month just to check in on the office. And so that's where I would stay. But other than that, we're like, all right, no, I don't think I want to do short term.
I hope you gave yourself good reviews when you stayed.
Yeah,
And so Balloon Fest is there, right? In Albuquerque.
it is.
Would your short-term rental just be crazy then? Or
Oh yeah. During that time, that's when we could bump up the prices on rent. So it's an amazing time. If you guys have never done it, that should be on your bucket list. It's actually pretty awesome.
What is the Blue Fest?
So the Balloon Festival,
balloon. Okay.
Yeah, it's the largest hot air balloon festival in the nation. So
I've heard about it. I thought you said blue.
Yeah, imagine all these hot air balloons everywhere. It's pretty awesome.
I used to be in the car rental business, and we could never figure out how to get the right number of cars in Albuquerque for that short window, because you could rent every car on the planet there. But right when it ended, you're stuck with all these cars sitting there and no one there.
That is so true.
Yeah, so I'm imagining you had the same kind of thing with any kind of a short-term rental.
It's very hard to find anything there during that time. Absolutely.
That is so neat. Okay, so I know the rent rates are increasing. Now we had price appreciations over the past 2 years, and now interest rates is up. How does that factor into the rent price? Is it still, would it still make sense for investors to buy? Can they still make, cash flow?
It still makes sense, but I mean, also, we do have property taxes that are increasing. And so something that we're doing is of course, our investors are protesting their property taxes, to avoid from going up. But we're still seeing, obviously, it's probably not going up as much as, the home prices are, but we are still seeing that rents are increasing. And I think it's going to be a renter's nation. You're going to see a lot more renters, right? Especially when interest rates increase, there's going to be some people that just can't afford to buy.
All right, I've got another question. It seems like every 12 minutes, there's a new rule about pets and what pets you have to allow, and this pet, and the assisted, and this one's got a crocodile that they need to have there for their safety and comfort. And what the heck is going on? What are the rules now?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because there are new rules all the time. And if you're not a seasoned property manager and know the fair housing laws, then you can get in trouble. So actually, I'll tell you one cool thing that we do, and it's to help so my staff doesn't also say something that they're not supposed to, right? Because the rules are always changing. So we actually use a company called Pet Screening. So it's petscreening.com. And so we actually screen our pets just like we screen our tenants. And so they give us a PAW score. So they have to fill out an application on their pet, and Pet Screening will do the due diligence on it to make sure that, number one, they are, if they say that, because that's a big thing right now, is they're saying that they are either a service animal or an emotional support animal. And as agents, we can't say that, we can't ask them any questions, right? Because that's part of fair housing. And so they will actually go above and beyond, and they'll get doctor's notes from their, exactly. And to confirm that it's a legitimate service or emotional support animal. It also goes to the extent is if the pet, they'll screen it through the insurance company to see if the insurance companies actually denied this animal to be an aggressive animal. Right. And so it kind of takes the pressure off of us, to say, okay, like if it's a 5 PAW score, then that's a good pet to have. And that's what we tell our owners is, look, everybody has pets nowadays. This is not going to do much damage. We're getting a PAW score of 5. If it's a 1, then we say, you know what? And let's reconsider this, because this pet might do some damage. But it just takes the pressure off of us for the emotional support animals and the service animals as well.
So I just want to repeat what you said here, because this is super fun for me. There's a company called petscreening.com.
Yes.
Is that a national company or a regional company?
It's a national company.
Okay. So when someone says they want a pet, you push them over to petscreening.com.
Right. So we have a platform that they submit their application or pet application through Pet Screening so they can screen them.
And the PAW scores, does it mean that since it's a paw that it has to be a dog, or does a bird get a PAW score? How does that work?
Yeah, any of them get it. Yeah.
The
a
birds
cat,
might feel,
bird, dog, whatever it is.
The birds might feel awkward getting a PAW score, don't you think?
I don't know if I actually have anybody that has submitted on a bird, but definitely cats and dogs.
I bought a property about 6 years ago, and the guy had 75 birds
75
living on his
birds?
property.
Wow.
Wow.
And the reason he sold it to me was because the neighbors finally had enough complaining that they were doing, and he couldn't sell it on MLS. Nobody else was going to go into the house except for me with all the birds. But had I known that there was a pet screening service, I could have gotten all these paw scores. We could have figured some stuff out. This is super fun. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And actually our investors appreciate that, because I see a lot of investors that come say, you know what, I don't want a pet, and when I explain this to them, then they feel, because nowadays everybody has a pet, right?
Yeah.
And we just need to weed out the bad ones from the good ones, just like the tenants, right?
Exactly.
Well, this is one area where short-term rental is probably better because we don't have to acknowledge emotional support animal.
Yeah.
They have to be a real service animal to, for us to waive a pet fee. So we don't have
That's
to.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you can also use the pet screening in your business as well, Vee. I think that would probably be beneficial to know, okay, because you have furniture in your properties, right? And so
that's a great idea. We're probably going to look into it.
Yeah.
All right.
It's actually a pretty cool service. So petscreening.com. Yes.
How fun is that?
Eventually, they're going to have screening for everything.
Yeah.
If you look back in all of your years in real estate and where you are today, at what point do you say, that was my turning point, my career turning point?
So I think it was back in 2010. So in 2010, that's when the market started to soften up a little bit. And we at that time, we were actually we were still fixing up properties and selling them retail. And we were finding that it was starting to become harder and harder to sell, right? And I turned to Sean. I was like, look, I don't know how much longer I can continue to just be flipping houses. Right. I wanted residual income. I wanted, there was ups and downs. Like sometimes you would have a bunch of closings and be on a high, and then sometimes you didn't have any. And so I was tired of this roller coaster. And so we decided to pivot into turnkey real estate investing. And so for those that aren't familiar with turnkey, basically what that is that we would buy a house, fix it up, and then we'd sell it to an investor and then manage for that investor. And so when Sean and I came up with this, we're like, look, let's try it. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't work out, the worst that could happen would be that we would have to keep it as a rental for ourselves, right? And so that's kind of how we looked at it. And so when we started selling turnkey, they were selling like hotcakes. Like investors wanted them. And then it kind of grew where we were speaking in California to investors, and we were selling them to California investors. And so it just grew. So that was probably our turning point where we created, just by taking that next step, and we created a business, right? And so, and now that's what we have, is the turnkey and the property management. Yeah, that was probably our turning point.
So we hear a lot about the turnkey concept, but what is it about you guys that make it work so beautifully versus other people that didn't make it?
I'm glad you brought that up, because there is a lot of turnkey guys out there, and they kind of misuse that turnkey word, right? But I think the important part is that we not only sell the investment properties, but we also manage it. And so with our investors, we don't want to hand them off to some other property management company, right? We want them to experience everything. So as soon as the house is built, then we're putting a tenant in place, and they're not even closing on the property until they're starting to make money. So the handoff to the property management company, which is our property management company, we're all about the customer service. And if there's anything that goes wrong, hey, we're in this together. The turnkey side and the property management side, we're in this together.
I want to shift gears. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Can you remind me one more time about your book, what the main theme was? Because I want to play off of that.
Yeah. So the name of the book is The Choice Is Yours, and it's balancing success as a wife, mom, and entrepreneur. So really a women empowerment book is really why I wrote it.
Okay. So I'm married. I have 3 sisters and 2 daughters. So this topic is sort of interest to me. And then being a real estate investor for a period of time, what I've noticed is I'm a real estate broker and a real estate investor, is within the real estate brokerage piece, it's roughly 50-50 female, male, maybe 60-40 female. In the real estate investment side, though, it is not like that at all. Yeah. It's so heavily weighted with males versus female, but it doesn't make any sense to me. Can you explain to me why you think that is the way it is?
And I think that as women, we have a lot of pressure on us to, take care of the family, take care of the household, right? And our dreams and goals kind of we just let it go, right? And so I think that women we're smart, right? and I think
Amen. We are.
Yeah, what it comes down to is the confidence. I think that confidence piece to say, hey, you know what? I can do this. And the minute that your confidence comes out, then that's when you guys are in trouble. I know that's when my husband was in trouble.
Well, so you think it's mainly, would it be fair to say it's heavily a cultural issue?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And my sense is that when there's some sub-organization or some local REIA or something like that, and there's some females in positions of leadership and influence, all of a sudden there's a lot more females who come around because they see somebody who's personifying what they want to be at, right? And they get more successful. Do you think that's a fair statement, or do you think I'm way off in left field? No, that's fair. And I think that's why, like women like Vee and I, when we get out there, I think that motivates and that inspires other women to get out there and do something that they love.
Yeah, it's surprising to me that it's so weighted in the real estate investing world.
Yeah,
it's changing a little bit, but it just still feels unusually weighted for no reason.
I think you're seeing more and more of it, and I think I think that's why you're seeing more and more of it is women are finally starting to step out, and be leaders. And other women are noticing that, and they're like, hey, I can do that too. Why not?
Yeah, I think when I first started 7 years ago, I often, I think Joni, you know this too. I would be the only woman. You might be the only woman in the room for a long time, but yes. I think in the past 2-3 years, that has changed a lot.
It has.
We notice more and more women show up. And I think you're right about that confidence. Many women probably were raised to not thinking they can deal with this because they think of this as constructions, not relational, right? Technical. And when they realize this is all about relationship and talking to people, and then that's where women are better.
You got it, V. So yeah, I mean, and they see us out there, and I think that just and I've got that a lot. Like, oh, you inspire me, to get out there, and you motivate me to get out there. And that's really what I would that I love to do. Is I love to help women it didn't have to be in business. It can be in anything, like in health and fitness, whatever. It doesn't have to be in business.
But, I think there's something also is the culture, right? They expect so much more of women than they do of men.
Oh,
and I'm not a sexist person, really. Like, we're supposed to show up with hair done, with makeup, with nails done.
Yeah.
And be in shape.
We have a lot of pressure.
Yes. So, yeah. If we didn't have to worry about all that, we'd probably all be CEOs, Adam.
If you just shaved your head like I did, then you wouldn't have to spend all that time on your hair.
I'm going to try that style next time.
Yeah.
You guys are so easy that you can pick out, you probably, my husband's whole closet is black, right? He's like, we're black polo shirt every day. I'm like, I can't do that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's no doubt it's easier to get ready quick for the guys.
Maybe that will start a new trend for 2025, bald-headed woman.
You go first, V. I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes, V.
You never know. Trend started by somebody.
And you pick 2025. That's sort of a random year to start a trend. Like, is that you're going to prepare for it for 3 years, or how's that working?
Yeah, that's it.
She's got to get the confidence to do that. I don't know if I can do that.
Right. Good point. You can start with a wig, a bald wig, and see how that goes first. And if you don't like it, just take it off and go back to where you are now.
Not a bad idea. Okay, so as we are wrapping up and with all this greatness, that all the accomplishment that you've done, Joni, what's next for you?
What's next? So, just really, the next 5 years, I want to just continue to try to impact as many people as I can, whether it's women, whether it's, I've obviously helped a lot of people build wealth through real estate and their investments. So, I'm going to continue to do that for the next, 5 to 10 years. And then who knows, maybe I'll retire in Mexico or something. I love to travel. Our family loves to travel. So I think I'll be doing a lot of traveling in the future.
Okay, so what is the one thing that people might be surprised to learn about you?
So we were just talking about this earlier. So, fitness has always been my passion. And I did a fitness competition in September of last year. And it was probably the best experience of my life. And I want to say that probably, doing that competition really showed like how disciplined I could be, right? And how mentally tough you can be. Because it's no joke, like with the eating habits and the training habits, all of that, and I did it. So I was very, very happy completing that. It was tough, but I would definitely do it again.
Yeah, that was very amazing. For people who are listening on podcasts, we're going to put this picture up into our video so you can see how fit Joni looked.
It made me blush.
Okay, so last question for the day. How does audience get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I also have a podcast. It's called Inside the Wolf's Den. So you can see on the background here. So you can find me at insidethewolfsden.com. And then also I'm on pretty much every platform. So Instagram, Joni M. Wolfswinkel, and then also on Facebook, Joni M. Wolfswinkel. So I know it's a hard name to pronounce, but I'm sure you'll have it in the show notes. But Inside the Wolf's Den is how you can really find me.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed talking to Joni. If you want more, join our Facebook group, REBallers, for further discussions of this episode. Wherever you are listening to your podcast, please subscribe to the Real Estate Ballers so you never miss another show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we appreciate a 5-star rating, a written review, or if you simply share it with a friend. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed talking to Joni. If you want more, join our Facebook group, REBallers, for further discussions of this episode. Wherever you are listening to your podcast, please subscribe to the Real Estate Ballers so you never miss another show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we appreciate a 5-star rating, a written review, or if you simply share it with a friend. Thank you and see you next time.